"I think your daughter poured something into your drink." The words slipped out of the waiter's mouth so quietly I almost thought I'd imagined them. For a second, I froze, my hand hovering just above the stem of the wine glass. The red liquid shimmered under the golden light of the restaurant, a perfect little ocean of trust, and suddenly I wasn't sure whether I could swim in it anymore. I looked up, and the young man's face was pale. His eyes darted toward my table, where Emily and Jason sat laughing like a photograph come to life. The laughter felt too sharp, too rehearsed. The waiter stepped back quickly, pretending to rearrange silverware. I nodded once, not wanting to make a scene. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice steady, though my heart began to thud like an old engine that hadn't been started in years. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. 40 years of work, 40 years of sacrifice, missed birthdays, and half-eaten dinners had led to this one night, a dinner meant to celebrate the sale of my software company. $42 million. That number had a certain ring to it, like the sound of a safe door closing for the last time. When I walked into the restaurant earlier, I'd felt lighter than I had in decades. The chandeliers sparkled. The air smelled of seared steak and polished oak. Emily had hugged me. Jason had clapped my shoulder. And for a brief moment I'd believed that maybe, just maybe, my success had bought me peace. "Dad," Emily had said, squeezing my arm, "you finally did it. You deserve this." She looked beautiful, confident, the mirror of her mother at that age. The same chestnut hair, the same smile that could melt steel. I had wanted so badly to believe in that smile. "Let's order something special," I'd said, flagging the waiter. "The best you have? Tonight's on me." Jason laughed, his watch catching the light. "With 42 million, I should hope so." I'd laughed too, though his tone carried a faint edge, like a joke sharpened just enough to draw blood if handled carelessly. And now, here I was, sitting across from them, the stem of my glass still cold in my fingers, wondering what kind of celebration ends with suspicion instead of champagne bubbles. I leaned back, pretending to enjoy the jazz music curling softly around us. The band played something smooth, "Fly Me to the Moon," I think, but all I could hear was the echo of that single sentence. "I think your daughter poured something into your drink." I watched her, the way Emily tucked her hair behind her ear, glancing briefly at my glass, the way Jason's hand rested lightly over hers, as if reassuring her of something I wasn't supposed to notice. When I finally lifted the glass, both of them looked up at once. It was subtle, but I caught it, the flicker of tension, the slight inhale. I smiled, clinked my glass against theirs, and said, "To family." Emily smiled back, but the corners of her mouth trembled. "To new beginnings." I brought the rim to my lips, let the wine touch them, then set it down without drinking. A father shouldn't have to measure every heartbeat at a dinner table. But that night, I did. The waiter passed behind me again, silent as guilt. I felt the air change, something invisible but heavy. I wanted to ask why he'd said it, what he'd seen, but part of me already knew. After all, I'd noticed the strange phone calls earlier that week, the quick closes of laptop lids when I entered the room. I'd told myself I was being paranoid. That's what aging does to you. It makes you second-guess your own instincts, like you've misplaced your sense of judgment somewhere between your morning pills and the evening news. But now the puzzle pieces began to shift. The banking alerts I brushed off, the sudden insistence from Jason about helping with the trust paperwork, Emily's gentle reminders that, "It's time to relax, Dad." Relax. That word, coming from your own child, can sound less like care and more like a verdict. I smiled through the rest of the dinner. That's what men my age do. We smile through heart attacks, funerals, and betrayal. We pretend not to notice when the people we love sharpen the knives right beside the bread. By the time dessert came, I had made up my mind. I wouldn't ask questions, not tonight. If there was poison in that glass, I wanted to see how far love was willing to go to hide it. I looked at Emily one more time, memorizing the curve of her face, the flicker of her eyes. My daughter, my only child. And just like that, the night that was meant to celebrate 40 years of my life became the beginning of its unraveling. I didn't sleep that night. When I got home, the air in my house felt different, stale, as if it had been holding its breath while I was gone. I kicked off my shoes and sat in the living room, the same place where I'd once read bedtime stories to Emily, where her laughter used to fill the corners that now held only the soft hum of the refrigerator. The wine still lingered in my mouth, though I never drank it. Maybe it was memory, maybe guilt, or maybe it was the taste of disbelief settling into my bones. I thought about the waiter, the tremor in his voice, the way his eyes darted toward Emily. He had no reason to lie, and deep down, neither did my gut. My instincts, the same ones that helped me build an empire out of an empty garage, were whispering that this wasn't paranoia. It was recognition. I looked around at my life, the framed awards on the wall, the patents, the certificates, the photos of Emily growing up, first bike, high school graduation, the day she married Jason. Each photo was proof of something I'd once believed in. Each one felt heavier now, as if they were accusing me of missing the warning signs. The clock ticked past midnight. I found myself replaying the night like security footage, the waiter's words, the hesitation in Emily's smile, Jason's smug calm. Maybe it was exhaustion, but a thought came to me slow, painful, certain. They think I'm too old to fight back. It wasn't anger that hit first, it was shame, because they might be right. I was slower these days, sometimes forgot where I left my glasses. I couldn't tell if that made me vulnerable or just human. Still, something in me shifted. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was survival. I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be the old man who fades quietly into paperwork someone else signed. The next few days passed quietly, or at least they pretended to. Emily kept calling, checking in as if the dinner had never happened. Her voice was bright, almost rehearsed. Jason's name appeared in my inbox more than usual, attached to links about retirement planning and how to simplify estate management. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe they were trying to help. Maybe I was still haunted by that whisper in the restaurant. But every time I answered the phone, I felt like I was walking barefoot across broken glass. One afternoon, Emily came by with coffee and that same perfume she'd worn since college, lavender with something sharper underneath. She moved through the house like she owned the air, opening drawers, rearranging papers, humming under her breath. "Dad, you've got too many passwords," she said, pulling out a notepad. "Jason says we can link your accounts under one secure login. You'd never have to worry again." I smiled, the kind of smile people use when they know they're being sold something. "Emily, I built software before Jason even learned to code." She froze for half a second. "That's not what I meant." "I know exactly what you meant," I said. The conversation died after that. She left a few hours later, kissing my cheek the way she used to when she wanted permission for something. The door closed, and the house exhaled. That evening, I sat at my desk surrounded by the soft tick of the wall clock. I logged into my checking account. Password rejected. Tried again. Rejected. I felt a strange mix of irritation and dread. Maybe Emily was right. Maybe I was slipping. But then I noticed a small red banner at the top of the screen. For security reasons, this account has been temporarily suspended. I'm Noward. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough for the Florida sunset to fade into purple and for my confidence to fade with it. I called the bank's helpline. After the hold music and robotic greetings, a young voice said, "Sir, your online access was updated 3 days ago. New credentials were added from a device registered under a secondary user." "Secondary user?" I repeated. "Yes, sir. Listed as Emily Whitman." My stomach tightened. "And who authorized that?" "According to our records, it was requested by the account holder." I almost laughed. "That's funny because the account holder is me." The rep stuttered, promised to escalate it, then transferred me to someone else who said they'd investigate within 7 business days. 7 business days. The phrase sounded like a bad joke told at a funeral. When I hung up, the room felt smaller. The framed photo of Emily on my desk, her college graduation, cap tilted, grin wide, seemed to look right through me. For the first time in a long while, I felt old. Not tired, not weary, just old. That night, I sat on the porch with the ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead and the Florida air clinging to my skin like damp cloth. The streetlights hummed outside, throwing soft halos onto the pavement. I tried to quiet my mind, but every sound, the rustle of palms, the distant bark of a dog seemed to whisper the same thing. You're losing control. When I went back inside, the house felt too neat, too organized. Emily had helped earlier, and I could tell which drawers she'd touched. She'd always had a habit of straightening things that weren't crooked. My tax files were stacked differently. My checkbook sat an inch to the left, and a single post-it on my monitor read, "We'll take care of you, Dad." The handwriting was soft, rounded, almost affectionate. It made my stomach turn. I poured myself a glass of water, stared at the reflection of the kitchen light rippling inside it, and wondered when care had turned into control. For years, I dreamed of slowing down sunsets by the bay, the smell of Cuban coffee in the morning, maybe volunteering at the local library. But this wasn't slowing down. This was being slowed by someone else. Around 10, Jason called. His voice carried that salesman's warmth, the kind that feels practiced. "Just checking in, sir," he said. "Emily told me you had some login issues. I can come by tomorrow, fix everything in 5 minutes." "I'll handle it," I said. He laughed softly. "Charles, technology's changed since your day. We don't want you stressing about these things." I could almost hear his smirk through the receiver. "I built firewalls before you could spell them," I said, and hung up. I sat back, letting the silence return. Anger wasn't boiling, it was building, slow and deliberate, like pressure behind glass. I knew better than to explode. Men like me survive by staying quiet until the timing's right. A few hours later, I sat at my desk again. The house had gone still except for the clock ticking above the mantel. I opened my laptop, determined to reclaim what was mine. Password recovery, new verification code, re-enter, confirm. Each step felt like climbing a staircase in the dark. Finally, the screen blinked to life. My name, my balance, my trust account. Relief flooded through me until I saw it. Recent activity. Access from unknown device. 2:17 a.m. It wasn't tonight. It was the night of the dinner. Someone had logged into my irrevocable trust, the account meant to safeguard everything I'd built, and changed permissions. My hands went cold. Whoever it was had used an IP address registered to my own home network. That meant the breach hadn't come from outside. It had come from within these walls. I stared at the screen until the glow blurred my vision, my reflection floating back at me like a ghost from the monitor's glass. The clock read just past midnight, but sleep wasn't coming. I closed the laptop, the click echoing through the quiet house. Outside, a neighbor's sprinkler hissed to life. Inside, I could feel something in me shift, a quiet resolve taking shape beneath the fear. If they wanted to make me disappear behind paperwork, they were going to have to face the man who wrote the code. It happened on a Wednesday evening, the kind of humid Miami night when even the crickets sound tired. I was upstairs in my study, half reading the newspaper, half thinking about that 2:17 a.m. login that had carved a hollow in my gut. The house was quiet, except for the steady whir of the ceiling fan and the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Then, faintly, voices. I thought the TV had turned itself on, but it wasn't that. The tone was too low, too intimate. I followed the sound down the hallway, past Emily's old bedroom, the one still lined with faded posters from her teenage years. The voices were coming from the guest room. The door was cracked open, just enough for a sliver of light to spill across the carpet. I recognized Jason's voice first. He's stubborn, Em. That's the problem. He thinks because he built a company, he can't lose control of it. Then Emily, softer but sharper. We just have to ease him into it. The doctor already said mild cognitive decline is common at his age. Once he signs the medical proxy, we can... Jason cut her off. You don't need to justify this. It's not cruelty. It's practicality. Look, the house alone is worth $2 million. His trust account, another 25. You want to spend your life waiting for that? There was a long pause. I could almost hear Emily's breathing, slow and uneven. I just want him to be safe, she said. Jason laughed, a short, dry sound. Safe doesn't pay for private school, or the new condo in Brickell. My blood ran cold. They weren't just scheming, they had already moved from ideas to logistics. My name was being reduced to line items in a spreadsheet. Emily spoke again, quieter now, almost like she was trying to convince herself. Just a mild sedative, that's all. Something to calm him when he gets defensive. Once he's relaxed, we'll get the signatures, Then it's done. Good, Jason said. I've already got the paperwork drafted. We'll do it at dinner, same as before. He won't suspect a thing. Dinner. The word hit me like a fist. I stepped back from the door, careful not to make a sound. The boards creaked anyway. Old wood has a cruel sense of timing. For a moment, the conversation inside went silent. My heart stopped beating long enough to hear only the cicadas outside. Jason's voice dropped. You think he heard something? Emily's tone trembled. No, he's probably in bed by now. I moved quietly down the hallway, back to my study. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely close the door behind me. I sat down, staring at the empty glass on my desk, remembering the waiter's whisper, the smile Emily wore that night, the way Jason's hand rested on hers. It all made sense now, the account access, the technical help, the new passwords. They were building a cage, and they were calling it care. That night, sleep was a stranger. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me, its shadow slicing across the room like a slow pendulum. Every word I'd overheard replayed in my head, looping over and over until it felt carved into bone. The anger wasn't loud, it was surgical, steady. Years of building something from nothing had taught me patience. When people underestimated me, I let them. It always made the fall harder when the truth surfaced. At dawn, I brewed coffee the way Margaret used to, strong enough to wake the dead. The kitchen smelled like mornings from another lifetime. For a brief second, I wanted to believe maybe I had misheard them. Maybe Emily was just stressed. Maybe Jason was just talking nonsense. But then the bitter taste hit my tongue, and I remembered the whisper from the waiter. No, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coup. Later that day, Emily called. Her voice was sugary sweet, the kind that coats lies in honey. Dad, Jason and I were thinking of having another little dinner tomorrow night, she said. Just the three of us. Celebrate everything again properly this time. My pulse slowed. The script was unfolding exactly as they planned. Sure, I said. That sounds nice. She paused. You sound tired. Just didn't sleep much, I replied. Old age catching up to me, I suppose. In fact, there was a small laugh on the other end, relief mixed with arrogance. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. I hung up, staring at the phone long after the call ended. Take care of me. That phrase, once tender, now felt like a veiled threat. The rest of the day, I moved through the house like a ghost. Every object, photos, awards, the old wedding china looked different, as if it all belonged to someone else. I realized, with a hollow ache, that my home had stopped feeling like mine long ago. But I also realized something else. They had made one mistake. They thought I was still the same father who gave in when Emily pouted, who believed family could fix everything. They forgot who I used to be, the man who built a company from his garage, who fought off competitors twice his size, who learned to read code, contracts, and people. That man was still here. So, I started to plan. I made a call to an old friend, Ryan Blackwood, the lawyer who'd helped me set up the trust years ago. He didn't ask many questions, just said, meet me tomorrow, same place, noon. Next, I checked the security system. Every corner of the house had cameras. Jason himself had installed them a year ago for my safety. I logged into the feed, downloaded the most recent files, and made a copy. Then I placed a small voice recorder, one I used for business notes, under the dining room sideboard. If they wanted to trap me with my own signature, I'd trap them with their own words. When the sun dipped below the horizon, the house grew silent again. I walked to the patio, watching the reflection of the last light fade across the Biscayne Bay. The air smelled of salt and something metallic, like rain about to fall. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel afraid. The pain was still there, sharp, personal, permanent, but underneath it was something else. Clarity. Tomorrow night, they would smile and toast again. They'd pour the wine, the same way as before, and I would be ready. Dinner smelled like deceit. Emily had cooked herself a rare gesture these days. Lemon chicken, roasted potatoes, a bottle of red wine breathing on the table as if it, too, knew what was coming. The whole scene was rehearsed down to the napkin folds. I had spent the entire day keeping my hands busy and my mind quiet. By nightfall, I felt like a man about to walk on stage. Except this wasn't a performance, it was survival. Looks good, I said, sliding into my chair. The clink of silverware against porcelain filled the silence. Jason poured the wine, smiling too easily. To family, he said. To new beginnings, Emily added. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I lifted my glass, watching the reflection of the chandelier ripple across the surface. To endings, I thought. We drank, or rather, they did. I let the rim of the glass brush my lips but didn't take a sip. The first half of the meal passed in small talk, Jason bragging about a new client, Emily commenting on the stock market. I nodded at the right moments, pretending to be the aging father whose world had started to shrink. When Jason stood to refill the glasses, I noticed the subtle exchange. A tiny packet from his pocket slipped into Emily's palm beneath the table. Her thumb brushed over it, casual as breathing. I didn't move. I just waited. Dad, Emily said suddenly, her tone bright and unnatural. You've been working too hard, even after selling the company. You should really let yourself relax. She leaned forward, pouring from the bottle, her hand trembling just enough to make the gesture look sincere. A few drops of wine splashed onto the tablecloth, ruby stains spreading like small wounds. Jason added softly, "It's good to let go sometimes." I smiled, the way a man smiles at children who don't know they're being watched. "Maybe you're right," I said. "Let's toast to that." Emily handed me my glass, the one she'd just poured. I watched the rim glisten. My fingers brushed against hers, cold, damp. I held her gaze, long enough to see something flicker there. Guilt, maybe, or fear. As she lifted her own glass, I turned mine slightly, switching their places, while pretending to adjust the napkin. The movement was fluid, unremarkable. I'd done it 1,000 times at business dinners, swap the bottle, slide the folder, make the deal. She didn't notice. Neither did Jason. "To letting go," I said. We raised our glasses. Emily took a sip first, eager, almost relieved. I took none. The clock on the wall ticked. The air conditioner hummed. And then silence. Emily blinked once, then twice. Her hand trembled, the glass slipping from her grasp and shattering against the floor. "Emily," Jason's voice cracked. Her chair tipped as she slumped forward, the color draining from her face. "Call 911, Jason shouted, stumbling to catch her. I stood there, frozen but calm, the years of corporate crises hardening my nerves. As he fumbled with his phone, I dialed 2 steady hands, measured voice. "My daughter collapsed," I told the dispatcher. "Send an ambulance to Coral Gables, 1125 Palmetto Drive." Jason hovered over her, muttering her name, panic breaking through his polished mask. When the paramedics arrived, red lights painted the front yard. I watched them work, checking her pulse, securing the oxygen mask, lifting her onto the stretcher. Jason trailed them, his shirt stained with wine and sweat. As they loaded her into the ambulance, he turned to one of the EMTs and said something low. I couldn't catch every word, but I heard enough. "He did this," Jason whispered. "My father-in-law. He poisoned her." The door slammed shut. The police came before midnight. 2 patrol cars, lights muted, engines humming outside the gate. The neighbors peeked through their blinds, hungry for gossip. In Coral Gables, scandal travels faster than sound. An officer knocked, polite but firm. "Mr. Whitman?" I opened the door, still wearing the same shirt, sleeves rolled up. The smell of wine and lemon chicken clung to the air like smoke after a fire. "May we come in?" I nodded. They were kind enough at first, professional, measured. They asked routine questions. When the dinner started, what Emily ate, who poured the drinks. I answered each one slowly, calmly, as if we were talking about someone else's life. But everything changed when the senior detective walked in. His name tag read Hernandez. Thick mustache, sharp eyes. He didn't sit. "Mr. Whitman, your daughter is in stable condition," he began. "She's conscious." I exhaled quietly, though relief never reached my chest. "She also says," he continued, "that you've been acting paranoid for months, and that tonight you accused her husband of trying to control you. She believes you might have put something in her drink out of anger." My pulse thudded in my throat. "She said that?" Hernandez crossed his arms. "She did. And your son-in-law confirms it, Jason. Of course. The man was poison wrapped in a silk tie. I looked the detective squarely in the eye. Then maybe you should check his bank records. You'll find enough motive there to fill your whole station. He didn't flinch. We'll look into it, but for now, you'll need to come with us for questioning. They didn't handcuff me, but it didn't matter. The walk to the cruiser felt longer than the 40 years I'd spent building a business from nothing. The flashing red lights painted the inside of the car, each pulse like a heartbeat counting down to something irreversible. At the station, time lost its shape. I sat in a cold room with walls the color of oatmeal, hands folded, staring at the two-way mirror. A young officer brought me coffee, lukewarm, bitter. I didn't drink it. Hernandez came back in. You understand this is just procedure, right? I understand when someone's trying to build a story, I said. My daughter's husband has been siphoning money from my accounts for months. He's the one who tampered with that wine. Do you have proof? Not yet, but I will. That's sensitive. He studied me for a long time, then said quietly, We're holding you for 48 hours while we sort this out. When he left, the room grew heavy. The air buzzed faintly with the sound of fluorescent lights. I thought of Emily, little girl with paint on her hands, laughing while we built her first computer together. I could still see her face smudged with chocolate frosting on her 5th birthday. Now that same face was in a hospital bed, calling me dangerous. I pressed my palms together, whispering into the stale air, I didn't raise her for this. Hours passed. Maybe days. The clock had no meaning. Then, a familiar voice broke the monotony. Charles Whitman, someone said. I looked up. A man in a charcoal suit stood in the doorway, gray at the temples, eyes steady. Ryan Blackwood. He signed a few papers, exchanged a few low words with Hernandez, then turned to me. You're coming with me. Outside, the humid air hit like a slap. Ryan didn't speak until we reached his car. Then he said, You're lucky I still keep friends at the courthouse. They're calling this a family incident, but you won't get another free pass. I stared out the window. She said I poisoned her. She's confused, he said carefully. Or she's afraid of what Jason might do if she tells the truth. I stayed quiet. The night bled into the city lights, neon blurring against raindrops. Finally, Ryan parked outside his office. Charles, listen to me, he said. You want justice? Don't react. Document. Create a paper trail. Every lie leaves a footprint. Let's make them trip over theirs. He slid a folder across the seat. Inside were legal pads, a recorder, and a business card with his private number. This isn't about revenge anymore, he said. It's about proving you're not the villain in their story. As I stepped out into the rain, I looked up at the night sky, low, gray, unfeeling. My clothes were damp, my heart heavier than before, but something in me had shifted. They'd taken my peace. They'd tried to take my name. Now, I would take back the truth. Ryan's office was downtown, on the corner of Flagler and 12th, the kind of place that smelled of old leather and legal ambition. He'd cleared his schedule for me. Sitting across the oak desk, he looked older than I remembered, gray at the temples, tired around the eyes. So, he said, adjusting his glasses, you ready to dig? I nodded. Let's start with the accounts. Jason handled most of the transfers. Emily's name pops up occasionally, but it's him pulling the strings. Ryan called someone his assistant, probably, and within minutes, a printer started spitting out statements thicker than a phone book. When I saw the numbers, my stomach turned. Money flowing out in small, clever streams. $2,500 here, $4,800 there. Enough to stay invisible on a casual glance. But together, they formed a river. Ryan tapped a page with his pen. They've been using a Shell LLC Sapphire Care Services. Looks like a fake elder care company. He's been routing your retirement accounts through it. Under my signature? He nodded. Forged. Sloppy work, though. We'll need confirmation from a forensic analyst, but I can already tell the handwriting isn't yours. I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment. He used my trust, my love for her, every check, every favor I signed thinking I was helping my daughter. Ryan's voice softened. We'll make them eat those signatures, Charles. Later that afternoon, Sarah Chen arrived. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Former private investigator, now freelancing for Ryan's firm. She shook my hand firmly. Mr. Whitman, I read through the police report. Your son-in-law's story has holes big enough to drive a truck through. I do think. Then let's start driving, I said. We spent hours combing through my email archives. Sarah found messages from a fake financial advisor who'd been feeding Jason information about my assets. The IP address traced back to a condo Jason owned in Brickell. She smirked, jotting down notes. They tried to make you look senile, but they left a digital trail. Amateurs always do. At one point, she looked up from her laptop. They're trying to prove you're incompetent, right? That's their angle? Exactly, Ryan said. They're building a guardianship case. If they can show cognitive decline, the court gives them control of everything. Assets, medical, housing. Sarah whistled low. And once that happens, the old man's just a wallet with a heartbeat. I stared at the floor, anger pulsing behind my ribs. Not this old man. That night, I drove home feeling a kind of calm I hadn't known in months. Knowing the enemy's map doesn't make the battle easier, but it gives you somewhere to aim. I poured myself a small glass of bourbon, not celebration, just ritual, and opened the folder Sarah had handed me before leaving. Inside were printed screenshots, account logs, and something that made my hand freeze midair, a copy of a medical report. At the top, in neat black ink, preliminary diagnosis, early-stage dementia, and at the bottom, my name, my signature. Except I never signed it. For a moment, the room tilted. I sat down, heart pounding. Every letter on that page was a weapon, sharpened against me. They were painting me as unfit to manage my own life. A legal corpse waiting to be buried under guardianship orders. I called Ryan immediately. They filed medical documents, I said, voice shaking with controlled fury. Fake ones. I have a copy. He was silent for a beat, then said, Keep it locked up. Tomorrow we take it apart line by line. Ting, in 17. Before hanging up, I heard his voice harden. You know what this means, right? They're not just greedy anymore. They're desperate. I hung up and stared out the window. The night sky over Biscayne Bay shimmered like oil, dark, heavy, hiding light beneath the surface. The next morning, the city woke slow and gray. Miami rain had a way of cleaning everything except conscience. I drove back to Ryan's office with the forged medical file locked inside my briefcase. Each stoplight felt like judgment. Ryan was already waiting, sleeves rolled up, coffee steaming beside him. Sarah sat cross-legged on the couch, typing on her laptop, eyes flicking up when I entered. Morning, gentlemen, she said, then grinned at me. Well, gentleman and survivor. I handed Ryan the file. This is what they used. He flipped through it carefully, page by page, face tightening. They built a full narrative. Cognitive decline, medical recommendation for guardianship, even a psychiatrist's signature. Sarah leaned closer. Except the psychiatrist retired 5 years ago. I just checked the license database. Ryan looked at me. That's fraud on multiple levels. We'll get a forensic team to confirm. I nodded. They wanted the court to think I was losing my mind. Let's remind them how sharp it still is. We spent the next several days building the counterattack. Ryan called it a paper war. Every claim Jason and Emily had made, we buried them under documented truth. Bank statements, emails, witness accounts. Even the waiter from that first dinner agreed to testify about the whisper. Sarah found the final piece. Late one afternoon, she burst into the office, waving a folder. Got it. The offshore transfer route. Jason opened a Cayman account using your name and a digital power of attorney. She dropped it on the desk. He even used your old signature from the trust paperwork. Ryan's eyes narrowed. That's enough to sink him. But we're not just proving theft, we're proving manipulation. That night, Ryan and I stayed late in his office, the blinds drawn, papers spread like battle plans. He drafted a new structure, an irrevocable trust, airtight, immovable. 25 million, he said, typing steadily. Only accessible under strict moral clauses. Emily inherits only if she stays financially independent for 5 years. No lawsuits, no criminal records. The rest goes to charitable foundations. I watched him work, the glow from the desk lamp painting half his face in gold, half in shadow. I'm not taking everything from her, Ryan. I said quietly. I'm teaching her that some things you don't steal, you earn. He paused, met my eyes, and smiled sadly. Justice doesn't always roar, Charles. Sometimes it signs documents. When the trust papers were finalized, I signed them slowly, carefully, each stroke deliberate. The pen scratched like a verdict. Afterward, Ryan leaned back. You've just taken control of your life again. Congratulations. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Not joy peace, the kind that comes when you finally stop being afraid. Sarah came in, holding her phone. You'll want to see this, I manned her. On the screen was a news alert. Whitman-Hare couple files for legal guardianship over tech magnate father. Ryan's face hardened. They moved fast. I read the headline again, the words blurring slightly. Emily and Jason had filed a petition in probate court, claiming I was mentally unfit, that I'd been manipulated by outside influences to sign away my assets. It was their last card, and they played it in public. Ryan stood. This is it, Charles. They just made it official. Now we drag this into the light. I looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The city below glistened, reborn but not innocent. For a long moment, I didn't speak. Then I said, almost to myself, they think they're protecting me from myself. But really, they've just declared war on the wrong old man. Sarah smirked, closing her laptop. Then let's make sure they regret underestimating you. Outside, thunder rolled one last time over Biscayne Bay. I gathered the papers into my briefcase, the forged reports, the transfer evidence, the trust documents. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was reclamation. As I left Ryan's office, the first light of evening stretched across the wet pavement. For the first time in a long while, I walked tall. But just before I reached the car, a courier in a brown jacket called out my name. Mr. Whitman, court summons. He handed me an envelope. The seal of Miami-Dade County stared up at me, official and cold. I broke it open. Petition for guardianship. Emily and Jason's names signed neatly at the bottom. The paper fluttered slightly in the wind, damp around the edges. I folded it once, slid it into my pocket, and whispered, almost gently, let's dance. The courthouse smelled like polished wood and old sweat, a mix of justice and fear. I'd been in boardrooms, mergers, and depositions, but nothing felt like this. The Miami-Dade County Courthouse wasn't just a building that day. It was an arena. Ryan walked beside me through the marble hall, calm as ever, his briefcase swinging like a weapon. Sarah followed, earbuds in, phone in hand, the picture of quiet readiness. Ahead, reporters waited by the double doors, shouting questions I didn't answer. Mr. Whitman, did your daughter really drug you? I kept walking. I had learned the hard way that silence was louder than outrage. Inside the courtroom, Emily sat at the petitioner's table. She wore pale blue, her hair pulled back neatly, face soft and pitiful, a portrait of concerned daughter. Jason sat beside her, jaw tight, pretending composure. I wondered if he practiced that look in the mirror. When she saw me enter, Emily's eyes flickered. There was something there, not remorse, not even hatred, just calculation. The judge, a silver-haired woman with a voice that could cut glass, called the room to order. Case number 1472B, petition for guardianship of Mr. Charles Whitman. Ryan stood, crisp and polite. Your Honor, my client contests the petition in full. Jason's lawyer, a slick man in a navy suit, rose with a smirk. We intend to prove that Mr. Whitman has been misled and manipulated into transferring his estate under duress. My clients have only acted out of concern for his welfare. Concern, Ryan murmured under his breath, spelled with a $sign. Everyone's. The hearing began with paperwork, the sterile dance of affidavits and exhibits. Then came the testimonies. Emily went first. She clasped her hands on the stand, voice trembling with just the right amount of fragility. My father hasn't been himself lately. He forgets names, repeats stories, signs, documents, without reading them. We only wanted to protect him. Ryan didn't interrupt. He let her words hang in the air, letting the audience, the judge, the jury, even the journalists, feel the performance. Then came Jason, ever the showman. He produced spreadsheets, photos, and fake invoices showing medical expenses and household maintenance. He even claimed he'd paid my bills out of his own pocket. I watched in silence, jaw set. Each lie landed like a hammer, but I didn't flinch. Ryan had told me, let them bury themselves with their own shovel. Is not now. When Jason was done, Ryan rose slowly. His calm was terrifying. Mr. Whitman, may I? I walked to the stand. The bailiff swore me in. The wood under my palm was cool, grounding. Ryan stepped closer. Mr. Whitman, can you tell the court about your professional background? I founded Whitman Technologies when I was 23. Built it from my garage. Sold it 40 years later for $42 million. Oh, and would you say attention to detail was part of your success? I built code line by line. One error could crash a system. He nodded. So you're not prone to signing documents you don't understand. Jason's attorney objected, leading the witness, but the judge waved him off. Overruled. Continue. Ryan's tone softened. Mr. Whitman, did your daughter ever ask to manage your finances? Yes. And what did you say? I said no. Why? Because love doesn't require access to a password. A ripple of laughter rolled through the courtroom, quiet, nervous. Emily's eyes hardened. Ryan flipped a page on his binder. Let's talk about this concern your daughter mentioned. He held up a printed email. Your Honor, this message was sent from Jason Miller's personal account to a financial advisor in the Cayman Islands. The judge leaned forward. Admit it into evidence. Ryan continued. In it, Mr. Miller requests to open a joint account under Mr. Whitman's name, transferring monthly installments from a retirement fund. The authorization signature, as verified by forensic experts, is forged. Jason's lawyer jumped up. Objection, this is hearsay. Sarah, from the gallery, spoke up without waiting for permission. Not hearsay if it's digital traceable, counselor. We have the metadata. The judge arched an eyebrow. You're not counsel in this room, Miss Chen. Sarah smiled slightly. No, Your Honor, just the one who found the evidence. A few in the audience chuckled. Jason's face went red. Ryan pressed on. Additionally, Your Honor, we have an audio recording obtained legally by my client's investigator. The voices belong to Mr. Miller and Miss Whitman. He nodded towards Sarah. She stood and connected her phone to the speaker system. The courtroom fell silent. Jason's voice came through, crisp and unmistakable. Just a few pills, Em, he signs. We're done. You'll finally be free. Then Emily's reply, trembling but real. Jason, what if he finds out? He won't. Old men trust their daughters. Gasps erupted across the courtroom. Reporters scrambled to record. The judge banged her gavel, but order took a full minute to return. Emily's hands shook, her mask cracking. Jason leaned toward her, whispering something sharp, but it was too late. Ryan turned to the judge. Your Honor, my client has been accused of losing his mind. I submit that he has simply lost his family's loyalty. The judge was silent for a moment, then looked directly at Jason. Mr. Miller, stand up. Jason obeyed, face pale. Under Florida Statute 825.103, she said, her voice like steel, I find probable cause for elder exploitation and financial manipulation. Bailiff, take him into custody. The room erupted again. Reporters shouted. Emily cried out, Jason, as the bailiff pulled him toward the door. Ryan placed a steady hand on my shoulder. It's over, Charles. But I knew it wasn't. Not yet. Because Emily was still sitting there, head bowed, her tears smudging the makeup she'd put on for pity. When the judge adjourned, the gavel struck once, echoing like thunder. Outside, the press swarmed. Flashes exploded. Voices rose. A reporter pushed through. Mr. Whitman, do you believe your daughter still loves you after this? I stopped, turned to face her. Love doesn't come with forged signatures, I said. And it sure as hell doesn't ask for power of attorney. Ryan chuckled under his breath. Sarah smiled grimly. The courthouse emptied out slowly, like a storm leaving debris behind. The reporters chased headlines. The lawyers packed their briefcases. And I just stood there, an old man in a quiet suit, trying to feel what victory was supposed to feel like. Ryan came up beside me. You did well in there, he said. I didn't do anything, I answered. Truth did. He half smiled, tapping my shoulder before heading off to talk to the press. Sarah lingered by the door, leaning on the frame. You know, she said, not many people your age would have fought this hard. Most just give up. I couldn't afford to, I replied. You give up once, and they write your story for you. She nodded. Then write yours properly, Mr. Whitman. The following morning, the newspapers hit every doorstep in Coral Gables. Elder justice served, Miami heiress convicted of exploiting her father. Another headline, Jason Miller arrested for forgery and elder abuse. The photo beneath it, Jason in handcuffs, Emily weeping beside a bailiff, looked unreal, like something out of someone else's life. Neighbors I hadn't seen in months stopped by my gate. Some offered congratulations, others apologies, but all I wanted was silence. At night, I sat on the porch overlooking Biscayne Bay. The water shimmered beneath the moonlight, the same bay where Emily used to play as a child, throwing stones, laughing, always asking if they could skip twice. I wondered how many things in life only skipped once before sinking. A week later, Ryan called. You might want to sit down, Charles. I was already sitting. What is it? He hesitated. A letter arrived for you, from Lowell Correctional Institution. For a moment, I didn't move. I just listened to the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Send it over, I said quietly. The envelope came that afternoon, plain, institutional, the kind that smells faintly of bleach and hopelessness. I carried it to the porch, knife in hand, slicing through the flap with deliberate care. Her handwriting was the same, neat, almost formal. Dad, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. But sitting here, in a place where every door locks from the outside, I've had time to think. I thought freedom was money. I thought security was control. But you can have both and still feel like a beggar if you've lost your name in someone else's eyes. Jason said we'd fix everything. He said you'd understand. But he was wrong. We were both wrong. Do you remember the night Mom died? You sat by my bed and said, "Promise me you'll never forget who you are." I think I broke that promise a long time ago. Dad, did you ever love me? Emily. I read it twice, the words pressing heavier each time. The bay outside was still. Even the palm leaves seemed to hold their breath. Did I love her? Of course I did. From the first time I held her tiny hand to the last time I watched her walk away, I loved her more than she would ever believe. But love wasn't a shield. Sometimes it was a mirror, showing us exactly what we didn't want to see. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and set it inside the desk drawer next to old family photos and Mom's wedding ring. Ryan called again that evening. You okay? I'm fine, I said. I got her letter. He hesitated. And, I don't know, I answered. Maybe justice costs more than anyone can pay. He was silent for a while, then said, At least it's done. But I wasn't sure it ever would be. The following Sunday, the church bells rang down the street. I walked there alone, first time in years. The same pews, the same stained glass, the same faces older by time. After the service, Father Donnelly stopped me. Heard about the trial, Charles? Justice is a heavy word, isn't it? Feels more like balance, I said. But the scales never stop moving. He nodded, then smiled faintly. Sometimes the hardest forgiveness isn't for others. Outside, the sun hit the bay, and for the first time in months, it didn't look like a battlefield. I went home, brewed a pot of coffee, and sat on the balcony. The city hummed below, alive and indifferent. Beside me on the table lay Emily's letter. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. The tide rolled in, gentle and endless, brushing the seawall like an old friend. I took a slow sip and said softly to the wind, I hope you find your way home, kid. The gulls circled above, and somewhere across the water, a bell tolled noon, one steady note fading into the sound of waves. I leaned back, letting the sun warm my face, and for the first time in years, I wasn't angry, not even sad, just free. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box to the right.